Hi guys, Smoth here. The groups of units you see fighting are the exact same units. The difference is between each team, they have different scheme selections. These schemes control color and texture projections onto each unit. This feature may or may not be in the final game. However, as of right now, I have it where each player can set their own individual scheme setting. Within each scheme, every unit may or may not have individual color and texture map settings. These color and texture projection settings allow for, say, a team to select green with camo pattern as their scheme, or just simply use the already existing default. Within these schemes, there's a series of individual unit settings called buckets. Like a paint bucket, where you apply color and finish to each unit. 8 of the 9 units in this grouping are the same exact unit. I'll select this aircraft and change its color. You'll notice that its 8 brothers have all had their colors changed accordingly. You'll also see that I've set the red, green, blue, and alpha channels, alpha represented by purple, to illustrate the various available settings. Each of these buckets can also have a specular applied. You'll notice that I'm setting individual colors for each bucket's specular setting. This can also be disabled simply by selecting the black matte specular, which will still apply a slight specular, but not entirely. So let's say all of these units are regular units, but you want one to be the ace. Let's set them all to olive. Alright, now we're going to select the ace unit. Oh, wait, nope. Still need to deselect the other units. So select the ace unit, select unit, okay. We're going to set him to red so that he stands out. He is special, he has special skills and or attack power. So now he can be easily differentiated from the rest of the group. So instead of having to take the texture, copy it, change the color of the texture, and then have a redundant second texture just to have a different colored unit, I can simply adjust the hue and make a different unit. This tool is not intended for player usage. It's simply created so that developers like myself can create individual unit bucket settings and then save them within schemes. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a tank with a scheme and without a scheme. You'll notice the second tank already has purples and blues set to its colors. This tank has already an existing scheme. However, the tank on the left does not. So we'll select him and we'll go ahead and begin his color settings. One of the more powerful parts of this bucket system is the ability to set a texture projection on both the red and green channels of the bucket settings. This texture projection can also have a texture matrix applied to it. Each projection matrix controls both the size and rotation of the texture upon the unit. It is a simple 4x4 grid stored in a configuration file. Projection matrices are not set to individual textures. They are set on a per channel basis, so each channel can have its own projection setting. This allows you to have different size and rotations of each texture. While texture projection is very powerful, it does have one major drawback, and that's the fact that it's projecting the texture upon the unit as though it was a light, which means that while for a long horizontal line like this one, it can create a great visual effect from the side. You'll note that it's at a slight angle on the side instead of straight vertical. So when I go to this psychedelic texture here, whoops, here we go, you'll notice there's some serious stretching. This is why you can set multiple matrix settings, so that you can try and find a setting that best avoids this stretching on each and every unit that you have. Okay, back to schemes. Each scheme can have an overall setting, but individual units can override this setting. So you can still have hero units within each scheme setting. So how do these materials work? Well, here's my current atlas. Although you can see that a lot of the space is unused as it's a work in progress, this is what's known as the texture 1, aka the diffuse map. This is the baseline texture. So you'll notice how it's mostly the metallics and the grays of the units. Now, there are a series of other textures, say for example the texture 2. This controls specular and reflective. Each channel controls a different aspect. So, say for example, red is all the glowing of the texture. And let's go back. And blue and green, originally in Spring Engine, will have like a reflective or specular component. However, I split these apart in my shader so that I could have specific control over each individual component. Moving on to texture 3, which is the bucket texture. You notice how there's a red, green, and blue component to each one of these parts. These each control individual bucket settings. So to go through them, you'll see the red, then the green, and these are the two that can receive a texture projection. Then there's the blue, which is usually just detailing, and then the alpha, which I save for things like glowing lights or say the windshield of a car. The only difference between the alpha and the blue and the green is that it's inverted. The reason why is that there's no alpha, it doesn't apply anything. So if it's something solid, it's just convenience sake. I know it seems arbitrary, but it works for me, and that's how I'm keeping it. If you want to do it differently, the source for this is open, so you can change it yourself. And texture 4 is a normal map. There's not much to say. It's a normal map. We've all seen them before. You can Google to read up on normal maps. So for none of you that have stuck around for this far into the video, this is just walking through the individual settings as far as how everything's set up within the code. This is a custom colors file which can be part of each individual game on top of the already existing color file, which I'm going to go over later. These are the individual color settings. You'll notice the default _ test. Test is just the faction name, so if you need a faction specific default, you set it in this sort of file. Whereas the other default file will go to things that say don't belong to faction tests. You'll notice this projection mode 1 and this red, green, blue. You'll see how it's grouped up here at the top. Alright, so this down here at the bottom is kind of superfluous. We really should be grouping it together with the red and the green. You'll notice the blue and the alpha do not receive texture map settings. Documented here thusly. So that's these guys. And close all this junk out. Close all the junk out. And this is code behind the scenes for Bucket Manager. Whee! Close, 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 close. Alright, this is a core base file. Okay, so let's go ahead in here, open up colors.lua. So like these are all the color settings stored for the game. You guys may notice the not finished equal true tag. Anything marked not finished will not have it set up as a finish setting within the bucket setting. It's just kind of a little bit of auto magical control. These are the detail textures you saw in the UI for that tool, and it actually just loads them from this directory. You don't have to configure anything. It just reads it out of this details texture directory. So that's generally the gist of it. You can come back up here, look at the test game and stuff, but I don't really see much of a point. So to go back, go through game data, configs, you'll have a paint jobs tree right here, and you can go in here individual settings. Like any particular unit, you'll notice it's named after the unit, so there's a little dyno setting. And you don't have to include everything. You'll notice I include just what it was changing. And it's really that simple. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good one.